Hello, I'm John Connolly. I'm the president at Sussex County Community College, and I'm the proud president of Sussex County Community College. And one of the reasons I'm proud is that Sussex County Community College has this long-standing tradition of what is known as the college novel. This year, the college novel is The Martian. And what I wanted to speak with you about today is just the extraordinary nature of this college novel program for the college, for the community, for faculty, for students, what it has meant, what it means, and just a little bit of some reflections from me on The Martian and what this book has meant to me as I've been reading it. And to begin, the college novel experience, and that's what I'm going to call it, the college novel experience, here at Sussex County Community College, is intended to be this pervasive, ongoing, year-long thematic exploration of a novel, a piece of fiction, basically something pretend, something made up, maybe based upon life, based on lots of things, based on our life experience, the experience of whatever author is the author of the novel of the year. And in my experience, in colleges around the country that have either a college book or a college novel project, that they tend to be pretty bland, they tend to be unproductive, they tend to die out. They last for a few years and then they go. This one has been going on for something like 27 or 28 years at this point. It's an extraordinary lineage of books that have been explored by students, faculty, and staff over the course of a year for that period of time. I've never even heard of a program or an experience lasting that long. And yet here at Sussex County Community College, we do. And the reason that it is significant, from my point of view, is that I have always believed in the power of stories. When one goes back in time, before really there was writing, there was something called the oral tradition. And the oral tradition was something that was maintained and kept alive through storytelling. One person telling another, or one person telling a group of others. And imagine the requirement for fidelity that goes along with that. If you're going to tell the story, you got to tell it right. And so there was this long history of the oral tradition. Obviously, stories would move and shake and adjust and so forth over time and with storytelling, but an amazing level of fidelity existed in these cultures to preserve the stories just as they were before they could start to be written down. And then when they were written down, storytelling took on a whole other form, more permanence. You could go to the text itself and you could see what the story was. And so then, it wasn't just about the filter of the storyteller to the audience. It then also became, more importantly, the filter of the receiver, the person who read it and experienced the story for themselves through their own eyes. I just love stories that have to do with courage and character. Courage and character are inspiring. You know, we're all looking sometime in our lives to be inspired. And so when you read stories of courage and character, it tends to mean something in particular for me. And I would say that we at Sussex County Community College do have a tradition of, since I have been here, of stories that have to do with courage and character of one kind or another. When I first arrived, there was the Orphan Train. And then after that, there was Station 11. And after that, I believe, was the Painted Drum. And then there was Sea of Stories. And now The Martian. And certainly The Martian is about character and courage. And these are elements that are universally understood. And in fact, if I understand correctly from one scholar who taught me that courage is actually a concept that did not exist before there was language to describe it and to infuse it with that emotional stuff that we call being inspired. And so courage does do that. Stories of courage inspire us. And certainly, this is a story of courage. And as courage against many odds, literally of survival, whether he could survive on Mars alone. And to me, that's another critical element of this, and that has to do with isolation. What does isolation do to us as human beings? We're social animals. And what kind of courage does it take, and what kind of survival skills does it take to, what do you need to summon inside of oneself to survive without the benefits of being here on Earth, but also the social isolation? What does that do to one's psyche? One of the things about the college novel experience, also from my point of view, is the relevance that it brings to our experience today. What does it mean for us today? Does it mean anything for us today? Well, certainly we need to be able to persevere. And certainly Mars is relevant as we are now today exploring how we are going to visit Mars in a more significant way other than orbiting it and taking pictures of it, et cetera, and learning from those things. But also, I don't know, more existentially, is what isolation means for us today. We have more technology that brings us together and also simultaneously isolates us. The pandemic that the entire world is enduring right now has to do with isolation. We are more isolated than ever for fear of getting this infection. And so it's really very appropriate that this book, the being stranded and isolated, and the kind of isolation that many of us are experiencing right now because of this disease, COVID-19, is a very real thing. And it explores a lot of that. What is it that we need to do to entertain ourselves? What is it that we need to do to engage ourselves? What is it that we need to do to be independent of others? How do we do that? So I think that isolation is a big theme of the book, but it's also a pertinent theme to our lives right now, metaphorically, existentially, pragmatically. But I think that also an important theme that is explored that is also relevant for us today, it's not just the isolation theme, but also technology. Technology can be duct tape, okay? It could be anything that helps to advance what we are doing. And literally that goes all the way back to the simple machines. Human beings, the very first simple machine we had at our disposal was an opposable thumb. And that really differentiates us. Our brain and our opposable thumb and the ability to be able to use our digits in a particular way. These are the first tools. Those were then expanded to tools like the fulcrum and the lever and the screw and the wheel and all of the simple machines. That's where it started, and it grew. And now we have computers that essentially operate and run the world, which are leading to actually artificial intelligence, all right? And so this never-ending parade of new technological advances and materials has resulted in a society that advances, but also hampers us in some ways. We fix a problem when we create a problem as we do so. And that happens in the book as well. So I think that the theme of isolation for today, the theme of how technology impacts us, how it benefits us, and how it harms us at the same time is an incredibly important thing. And I think also in The Martian, the obvious theme of adaptation. How is it that we adapt as a species or as a person to where we are? We're constantly under new stresses. And how we adapt and how we stay determined to adapt, whether to survive in one way or to survive in another. And right now is a significant time of adaptation. How many things do we have going on right now? The speed of change, of social change, of technological change, of change in our lives, which includes economic change. What kind of a job will I have tomorrow, next week, next year? Adapting. You have to adapt to the conditions. So I think that those are really tremendous and significant. I think that in addition, of course, we're looking at other themes that touch upon what we've got going on with adaptation, global warming. Global warming is a huge issue. What happens on Mars with its CO2-rich atmosphere. Although the atmosphere is thinner, the CO2 is richer. What does that then mean? What does that mean for agriculture and growing and where things grow and what happens in the soil, et cetera? One of the things that is inadequately, I think, explored is that it's not just the CO2 in the air on Mars. It's the CO2-enriched environment of the soil. And the growing of the plants, it's not just about the air that the leaves are absorbing, but the air that the roots are absorbing. And that's just an interesting biological thing as a plant biologist that I took note of. So I guess that is the sum total of my exploration of the Martian, sort of what it means to me, some takeaways. And I think that finally, when we think about what we want to do with our world and what things can be explored by faculty and by staff and by students in conversation about this, include those themes of isolation, technology, adaptation, but also of division. What are the things that divide us and what are the things that pull us together? Think about how the world pulled together to save the Martian. And why was that the case? Versus what we're looking at right now with such division. We are experiencing such levels of division. As long as I've been alive for 50 plus years, I have never seen or experienced anything like this in our country or globally, the kinds of division that we're seeing here. And I think what is in common is that people pulled together for the Martian because he was singled out as one person. And when you single something instead of take a group of people that you can paint with a particular brush, those people, them, they, it's just one guy. One guy. And everybody can relate to the one guy or the one gal, the one person, and think about what can be done to help them. The world pulled together in an extraordinary way when miners were trapped in South America years and years ago in ways that we really wouldn't have imagined. But it was because the isolated moment, the isolated incident, every single one of those people had a story. And I think that we need to keep that in mind. Every single person, whatever side of the fence that they might be on, is just a person. We need to humanize. We always need to humanize. Humanize the Earthling who's also a Martian. Really potent potential. Lastly, this is not the only place that we have seen this kind of thing before. Isolating to a human being that makes a difference, that humanizes. My first recollection of why I caught on to that and why it's so important was through fiction. It was in To Kill a Mockingbird. When Scout recognizes somebody in the crowd outside of the jailhouse, she says, "Hey, I know you, Mr. So-and-so." I can't remember his name. And it isolated him. He could no longer hide because the child, Scout, pointed him out and singled him out as a man, not a part of a mob. And that was the beginning of the end of the mob. So when we humanize, we destroy divisions. And we see it again in The Martian through fiction. So fiction is extraordinary. Fiction drives so much of the human experience. And I encourage everyone watching this video to dive into the college novel experience and lose yourself in the fiction and the characters. Thank you so much.